This video goes over what I expect for Project 1 Work Search. In this project, you will create a cover letter, a resume, and a thank you letter. As with the other units, we begin with the video explanation of the project, as well as the objectives for learning on this project. I've included here several resources for you, including an article about including pronouns on your resume, whether you should or should not. I've included some cover letter writing resources, some resume writing resources, and some thank you letter writing resources. I've also included an outline of what I expect for a basic business letter. Make sure that you get all of these things correct as you've had the time to go over this information, and you need to make sure that your work fits these parameters. I also included how you should properly write telephone numbers and addresses. Many people mess this one up, so please read through this section carefully. Finally, I've included both some prior student work samples, as well as some samples that I have helped out with either in the before or the after, and you can see a clear progression over time. Sample resume 2, that's an after resume, uses the same template as the before resume for sample 3. Now on to the project. For this project, you will create, again, 3 items: a cover letter, a resume, and a thank you letter. These 3 documents should be compiled into one single file, turned into a PDF, and submitted in the Submit Assignments link on the left-hand menu in Blackboard. Please know when it comes to using your personal information in these assignments that I do not share your work with anyone else, or if I do, with your permission, I will remove any personally identifiable information. I do have access to your email address and phone number and physical address already, so including them on a resume is not telling me anything that I couldn't find out if I wanted to. Please go ahead and use your real information when you're preparing these documents so that you get experience with fitting them in the space that you will need when you create one for yourself to go actually find a job. When you create your cover letter, make sure again that it conforms to the business letter expectations set forth in this unit. You must include your contact information, the date, which must be spelled out in long form, an inside address of the company where you're applying for the job. And for this case, it's okay to make something up. You don't have to look up a real address of a real company. It should be brief and to the point, no more than 1 page. You should request that they contact you back. Please do not just tell me everything that's on the resume here. I can see that when I read the resume. What I want here is your elevator speech, your sales pitch, what makes me want to look past your cover letter and at your resume in the first place. Make sure also that your formatting is consistent with your resume. If you use a specific header in your letter, make sure you use the same one in your resume so that they look like they belong to a set. The resume itself must include your contact information, an objective or a professional summary, like what's your point, what are you trying to do, why are you doing this. You need to include your education. You can include the degree that you're currently working on as long as you say pending or anticipated next to the date. You need to include a work history. If you don't have any work history, you can include volunteer information here, or you can include things that you did that you weren't paid for, like babysitting siblings or helping your grandmother or things like that. Just make sure that you put any transferable skills down so that someone looking to hire you into a job would understand how that can help you in a new role. Make sure that you include a list of skills and qualifications. What can you bring to the table? Include any awards or achievements or honors, and include any volunteer work if you're not using it in place of a work history. Make sure you include that separately. If you're a member of any professional associations or clubs or anything like that, include those. However, this comes with a caveat. Do not include anything that references your race, religion, or any other protected class, even if it's the name of an organization where you have volunteered. Leave those off. You never know who's looking at your resume, and you do not want to invite unconscious bias. Make sure you don't include first person. Never use I or me or my on the resume. Cover letter's fine, thank you letter's fine, but not in the resume. Do not include your photo in your resume. This is something that has become a trend lately, but it is still not accepted in professional circles except in a very few industries. Don't include your social media information unless you have social media that is specifically for work and nothing else. Again, you don't want to give them any ammunition to choose someone else instead of you. Don't make your resume longer than 2 pages. If it's more than 2 pages, no one will spend that much time with it. I promise you, I used to be a hiring manager, and when I saw resumes that were 3 or 4 pages or had a teeny tiny font with paragraphs and paragraphs of information, that was too much. Don't include every single detail of what you did. Just hit the highlights and leave the other information to be talked about in an interview. The goal of a cover letter is to get them to look at your resume. The goal of the resume is to get them to call you in for an interview, not to tell them everything about you. On the thank you letter, you have 2 choices. You can either handwrite a thank you letter like you would in a small card, and you can include an image of it, or you can write a formal business letter as a thank you letter with all of the appropriate parts of a business letter. For this, you must write as if you know the name of the person you spoke to. You would not write a thank you letter that said, "to whom it may concern." You would write it, "Dear Mr. or Miss Smith or Jones or Sampson," or whatever. Do not include first names in your greeting line on your cover letter or your thank you letter. The only exception to that is if you are handwriting a thank you letter and you imagine that the person in the interview invited you to call them by their first name, then you may write, "Dear Sally, Dear Bob, Dear Joe." Otherwise, it is always Mr. or Miss and their last name, not including the first name. If you were writing a letter to me, you would not say, "Miss Amy Sasser." You would say, "Miss Sasser." Please be sure that you get that correct because many people have included first names in letters and that is inappropriate. Make sure that when you write your thank you letter, you use specific language to not only thank them for the interview, but to mention something you spoke about in the interview, especially if it's something not related to the job, but something that gave you a connection to your interviewer. Something you were excited to learn about the company or the position is also a good thing to include. For this last part, for the thank you letter, you will have to use your imagination. You'll have to pretend that you had an interview with someone and it went really well, and that you were very excited about following up with them and hopefully getting the job. Please note, this is not a place to say thank you for hiring me. In this scenario, you have not been hired for this job. You have only interviewed for this job. So please don't include language about your start date or when you look forward to going into the training or any of those sorts of things. It is merely a thank you card for taking the time out of their day to talk to you about the possibility of joining their company. As always, if you have any questions on any of this, please do feel free to email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.